Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name is Joe Kuzma, and I'm here flying solo for a little bit of a quick hitter with some updates and news from this past weekend in the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are currently entering their padded practices, the second week of practice out in Latrobe, St. Vincent College in Pennsylvania. For their 2023 Steelers training camp, and that's where I will be headed shortly to get some actual feet on the ground and some eyewitness accounts later this week, so tune back in for some of that, but wanted to catch some of you up on some news and notes, something that I felt actually shook the foundation of maybe those who at least pay attention to the Pittsburgh Steelers and their offseason moves, a signing over the weekend that where everywhere I was looking, everything I listened to or read or watched seemed like a very big positive, and I got to thinking a little more in depth to how Kwon Alexander fits into the Steelers' plans and why he was brought on and why it took so long, et cetera, and I got a little more thoughts on that as we carry on through what should be a little bit shorter of an episode, just because now as they're resuming the padded practices here on Tuesday, there'll be some more things to look at, some videos that dribble out of the guys in shorts, but they're out of the shells and some of the helmet protectors and things like that they wear in that initial week. The Steelers, I believe, were the last team to report to training camp, and nothing but good stuff that you hear coming out of camp. And I got to thinking about a lot of this, and this was going to be the show actually, maybe even yesterday. Couldn't quite catch up with Flash or Brian before I head out to Latrobe and observe some of these practices in person. I was going to get some of their ideas on what was the weakest position as far as like depth, or is there still questions or quality concerns with the Pittsburgh Steelers and how they constructed the roster this offseason. I mean, they really attacked it. I can't think of a more active offseason in recent memory with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Just looking at them moving up to get Broderick Jones, the way the draft landed with Joey Porter Jr., Keanu Benton, Darnell Washington in the Kevin Colbert era. It's usually pretty quiet. I mean, there's the year they traded a first-round pick, but that was like 2 weeks into the season. Third week, I think Minkah just hopped off a plane and ended up playing. But trading for Minkah Fitzpatrick, you usually just get excited about like those one or two draft picks. Maybe there's some under the radar kind of free agent signings. I remember getting excited about like Steven Nelson or I got Joe Hayden really late in the process, right? He was a camp cut, and the Steelers went out and attacked, and that's where they were more aggressive, trading for like Vance McDonald. But some of the free agent signings over the years, Eric Ebron, it just wasn't, Mike Mitchell was like one of the bigger dollar guys, and it's because they had a lot of money tied up in guys that they did develop themselves, that they had drafted the Steeler way. Draft, develop, re-sign. And that's still going on. TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith. But the difference now is that you don't have one of these $50 million, and even back then, Ben Roethlisberger, $40 million, $30+ million quarterback contracts. You got Kenny Pickett under a rookie contract. It's very exciting to see, because a lot of these are like, they're still in the bargain basement kind of. I don't have the actual financials on what Kwon Alexander signed for, but I can't imagine he was very expensive. Sitting out there, he had some feelers, but to be available July, nearly August here, and that was I didn't think it was going to happen. They brought in Nick Kwiatkowski. You had some other names that were brought in. This inside linebacker group, it was one that we felt was heading into the offseason, something's going to change. What's going to happen with Devin Bush? Miles Jack, $8 million cap hit. Is he still going to be around? He wasn't healthy toward the end of the season. Wasn't a 3-down backer. Robert Spillane wasn't the guy. Would he still be brought back to be special teams? All these guys are gone. The only one left standing is Mark Robinson. And myself and Flash and Brian, a lot of this off the air, SCU backrooms type things we were talking. I was like, inside linebacker is definitely the place where the Steelers, they could use some help. And I'm trying to think who actually got signed first out of the group of this, but it was Landon Roberts and Cole Holcomb. They come over respectively as captains of each of their teams. Landon Roberts, defensive captain, I believe, each of the last 3 seasons with the Miami Dolphins. Doesn't really miss many games. He's got the stats to back up quite a bit. And we take a look at some of that. I'll pull it up here on the screen, sir. Oh, geez. It looks like, as they would say, Polly Walnuts on Soprano would say squadoo. And that's what it looks like. Let me see if I can get this just on screen, just good enough so people could follow along. Sometimes reading the numbers just isn't enough. But 107 combined tackles last year. Landon Roberts, 17 games played. Played 17 games the year before as well, but he used them for some blitzes last year. 4.5 sacks was a career high. 68 solo tackles, career high. 10 tackles for loss, 6 quarterback hits. It didn't scream to me as like a guy that you need a lot of depth behind. Where's the question marks here? You go a week through the beginning of camp with Roberts and Holcomb, and all of a sudden you sign Alexander. I mean, Holcomb, very similar. This is supposed to be a 3-down back type guy. Now, Arthur Moats and I believe talking with Wes or on Steelers Radio, Steelers.com, for those of you who listen and follow and tune in to some of it. He didn't feel that Holcomb's like the side-to-side guy, but that's what he was brought in to do, right? And he's created something. He did talk about splash plays. Didn't have a sack last year. He only played 7 games, so he's coming off of an injury. He had the year before 142 tackles. 142 tackles. Okay, I'm going to have to look and see what the Steelers had. Let's pull up last year's defensive stats. I don't think was anybody sniffing that besides maybe Minka? Miles Jack had 104 combined, 15 games. Minka had 96. Pull that up on the screen. 61 solo tackles, only 3 tackles for loss for Miles Jack. Let's look at that category there. So Devin Bush had 81, Spillane had 79. And there's going to be something about, like, I'm going to keep mentioning 3 inside linebackers because that's definitely part of it. Tackles for loss, Cam Hayward, Alex Highsmith, your edge guys, TJ Watt, Larry Ogunjobi. So guys along the defensive front there. Spillane had 4. He led the inside linebackers. Jack had 3. Bush had 2. Yeah. And as far as quarterback hits, I mean, you weren't getting anywhere there. Spillane wasn't really getting home there. None of these guys, well, let's see, Spillane registered like 1 sack in 2022. Jack didn't. Devin Bush didn't. And it's not for lack of effort. They send these guys. Maybe the inside guys don't get sent as much, but you're going to send them. I mean, when you know Vince Williams, nothing against Vince Williams. Great in Steelers lore, one of the great linebackers, right? Or at least good, or upper good, very good, right? You're not going to forget about Vince Williams. He hit like a truck. But one year he had like 5 or 6 sacks because they know, like, you're not going to have him just sitting back. Lawrence Timmons, you're not going to have those guys sitting back covering people all the time. That's not their game. They're not out there for 3 downs in past situations. Kwon Alexander is a guy that fits that bill. And he's out there already today. And the reports are that he's looking fast, looking good. This was a player that a lot of Jets fans, they wanted this guy back this year. And Aaron Rodgers was taking the pay cut. And that might have been part of it. They knew Rodgers was on his way over there. And they needed to clear the deck a little bit when it comes to finances to allow Alexander, maybe somebody else. They're looking at Delvin Cook. They're looking at all these different things. I mean, Rodgers just took a historic pay cut. What was that, $35 million? Jeez, you talk about Ben taking pay cuts a couple of years ago. I can't believe it, actually, for that diva. Aaron Rodgers, that is. Got to talk about which diva. But, yeah, Cole Holcomb, I mean, they're a little down last year. Still 69 tackles, a nice, fine number there, if I will say so myself. His previous 2 years, he was drafted by Washington originally. He was a 5th rounder. It became a pretty decent off-ball linebacker. Gets to the quarterback here or there. He knocks down some passes, had 7 in his full season in 2021. Forced 2 fumbles, had 1 of those recovered. Had 2 picks. We're looking for splash plays. They didn't get any of this stuff from these guys, Devin Bush and Miles Jack. And over the last couple of years, this has been a problem. It's been a problem since Ryan Shazier has been gone. So what exactly does Kwon Alexander bring to the table? And it just makes me wonder because you take a look at when he's healthy. Here's some Kwon's stats. I mean, he's entering year 10 in the NFL, but he was 21 years of age. And I think, let me scroll back up because his age right now, he'll be 29 on August 3rd. So a couple of days, he will celebrate his 29th birthday. Still young enough. He came in the NFL extremely young, a young player. A lot of guys do, but this is a guy that could still be in his prime, but he's had an injury bug here or there. You take a look, New Orleans in 2021, 12 games. 12 games between two teams. Originally, San Francisco is the team that offered him the nice contract when he came out of his rookie contract from Tampa, where with the Buccaneers, 12 games, 16, 12 games, 6 games his final year there in 2018. He goes to San Francisco, and the same kind of nightmare situation happens where he gets hurt. This reminds me of like Keanu Neal. You know what I mean? I was talking about Keanu Neal, I think, last week. Now Neal was a first rounder, whereas Alexander was a fourth rounder with the Bucks. But he's still a guy that's like played way above like his draft pedigree. But like with Neal, somebody who's been hurt, that if you don't have to rely on them 24/7, 365, it could be a nice rotational piece. Somebody can give your other guys a breather. Somebody you could put alongside Holcomb. So if you need somebody in there and you're going to play more of a base and you're going to have 2 inside linebackers instead of playing heavy with the DBs, which I'm going to talk about as far as like depth in weak areas of the Steelers. Slot corner, still something to be talked about, but Patrick Peterson is sliding in there and they're moving him around. I'm not talking about he said he's being allowed to be a football player. I believe that was his direct quote, football player, allowed to just be a player or a ball player as opposed to a cornerback. And that could reap some rewards too. The Steelers are looking for splash plays. They led the league in interceptions last year. What was it, 20 interceptions? That secondary, you're always talking about like the Steelers sacking and getting after the quarterback. You didn't have as much of that. You did have the picks coming from TJ Watt though, when he was healthy and on the field, especially Joe Burrow, just putting it right in between the 9 and the 0 on his chest, right? But back to Alexander. I don't want to jump around too much on how he helps, but you're getting an idea of like the depth that the Steelers have in the areas where they needed more of it. And I really should have started this by talking about some of the other areas. Do I think wide receiver has any depth issues? Absolutely not. They have more guys than I think they could roster. Running back, you got Najee, you got Jalen Warren now. So that's no longer a question. Kenny Pickett, you've got veterans behind him. Mitch Trubisky, very experienced NFL quarterback. Rudolph also has experience, and especially experience coming in cold. Mitch seems to like work in that environment a little better too. When you could get like a half a football out of Mitch Trubisky, like when you get good halves of football, he's just like, he goes into halftime and maybe goes cold or vice versa, cold and then heats up. Like he's good for a half of football. Like this is like a Charlie Batch kind of guy. You know what I mean? Protect the football where necessary. Don't have to be relied on to throw 50 passes. You could get that from those two guys. So I don't find those weak areas. I think the Steelers have a very good stable of backup quarterbacks compared to a lot of other teams in the National Football League. Tight ends are pretty deep too. You got Freiermuth. Washington's the rookie. He's going to ascend at some point. Gentry has developed nicely. Connor Hayward, fullback / tight end, H-back. The offensive line even. Now you may have Dan Moore and Broderick Jones in a competition. Broderick Jones is out there getting some first team reps, but they're still making him earn it. Moore would be a very nice swing tackle. What happens along that line? You've still got Nate Herbig that got signed too as a backup with Suomalo and James Daniels. You still got Kevin Dotson maybe competing for one of those spots, and he has lots of starting experience. Jerry Dulac was quoted as saying that he was surprised with the way the Steelers' offensive line improved last year, that they still made the wholesale changes. They were upgrading. So you still got guys with starting experience to fill in. This was some talk about the LA Chargers as well. LA Chargers, a lot of guys were missing last year. Tennessee Titans, a lot of guys missing last year. Now you get the other ones that were penciled in as starters that are still there. And maybe some that weren't, that earned that starting spot in this year. But regardless, you've got depth and you've got experience depth. This is something the Steelers have been missing because they've been having to plug in rookies and go cheap. And now they don't have to. And now that like you think of it as like a rebuild. Nobody wants to say the word rebuild. I never want to say the word rebuild. But you look at where they're at right now, and it looks like they've rebuilt pretty well. You look at around that roster, the offense, as long as that, like everything clicks, like there's a lot of like, okay, players with promise that maybe not have hit their potential ceiling of where they need to be. George Pickens, and he's talking about how he should be one of the best wide receivers. He thinks he's the best wide receiver in the NFL. Newsflash, wide receivers are divas, and they all believe that. I like the dog mentality. Deontay Johnson didn't catch a touchdown last year. but he's shifty. He's hard to bring down. He's got that one move on the little like comeback route, little button hook you, bam. It's unstoppable when that timing's down. But he was working with Mitch primarily last year. Get that down with Kenny this offseason. Oh my goodness, that's moving the chains every time. As long as he gets to the chains and then doesn't come too far backwards. I understand people are like, why did he do that? He's not the only wide receiver in the NFL to do that. Guys are trying to get more. Sometimes you just got to lay down, though. Just take it. Something Juju was good for. Excuse me. Of course, the detriment of working solo here. Got to get my coffee in every now and then. So, offensively, still Pat Freiermuth. You think he's going to ascend to be the dude? And Kenny Pickett, of course, and Najee Harris. A lot of young players on offense. But you at least have that, like, where you're not thinking, like, okay, this is a weak area. You're thinking they have at least addressed these areas, offensive line, with rookies or veterans or guys that have been signed over the last few years. You go on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, you got Cam Hayward, Larry Ogunjobi comes back. You got TJ Watt. You got Alex Highsmith. That nose tackle or extra depth could be along the defensive line is at least like DeMarvin Leal, Keanu Benton, Armon Watts, Braden Fajoko, Montravius Adams. Good stable of guys with some different levels of experience in the NFL or promise. You've still got Marcus Golden, Nick Herbig as your outside linebackers. We forgot about Quincy Roche, who they wanted to develop. Probably a prime candidate for practice squad, right? Secondary, bring in Patrick Peterson. The guy's a Hall of Famer. Levi Wallace is still hanging around that they signed last year and is like still a solid, steady hand. I think the way that's going to rotate is Joey Porter will be out there. Patrick Peterson, Levi Wallace, they're going to move around. I think Peterson's going to be more of the Cam Sutton kind of guy. They talked about early when he got signed about like, oh, he might play some safety or something like that. He's going to be the Cam Sutton guy. Will he play 100%? That depends on like at 33 years of age, how much gas does he have in the tank? But I feel comfortable if you have Porter. Porter lives up to the billing and Wallace does well as a corner too. And you bring Peterson in or leave Peterson in and then you bring Porter out. Play on the boundary, let's say on third down or a second and long, and Peterson slides in on the slot, then I'm not worried about the slot. Chandon Sullivan and whoever else might be there. You don't know who else gets cut from other camps that the Steelers may have some interest in or a trade. They've traded like, Vance McDonald, Akello Witherspoon. Like they've made some of these moves at the end of camps or picking up that Joe Hayden that gets cut. Those type of moves could still be part of the Steelers' plans, part of that whole blueprint from the front office. They're not finished building this roster, I don't think, so I'm not so concerned about that. But I looked at inside linebacker, and I know Holcomb was coming off an injury. I know Roberts is not the guy that goes sideline to sideline, and when they get hurt, who's behind him? Nick the Quick, as they were calling him, as Arthur Moats was calling him. I can't say his name. Kwiatkowski, I believe. I was looking at him, and I'm like, yeah, this guy's had promise, but that promise starts to diminish as you bounce around between different teams. How many different teams with is this Nick's fourth NFL roster? And I know Kwon is getting there too, right? And Nick's been in the league since 2016, and he's had his share of success or not. He didn't really play with the Falcons last year. Special teams guy mostly. When he was out there, he was with the Raiders 2020 and then with the Bears. And he's had, seasons where he's had 70, 80 tackles. 12 games played, 8 or 12. Wasn't a starter for the last 2 years. So people might sleep on him. But the Steelers, they've been looking at this. Tomlin's been around forever. Tomlin watches so much football. He's addicted. He's a nutcase. He's almost certifiably mental with how addicted he is to football. He said he watches like these leagues that are overseas when he was on Ben's podcast. It's crazy. I'm not that crazy about it. Crazy enough with the Steelers, but overall football, like I'm not watching the World Series of football that, years ago, my buddy went and got tickets down in Canton. Like he's a nut. He's announcing high school football games for his, his alma mater. I draw a line somewhere. I got to find a certain amount of time. I have a podcast. It's good enough. You know what I mean? So I'm on the podcast, I should say. Anyways, Tanner Muse is another guy that was added to this. All new guys, Roberts, Holcomb, Muse, Kwiatkowski. And then you got, in his second year as a pro, third year overall at the position, converted over to a linebacker, Mark Robinson. A lot of promise, but still Mark Robinson land in this grand scheme of things? You know what I mean? He's a seventh round, 225th overall draft pick last year from the Steelers. He got in for a few games. I'm looking up his game log right now. Kind of interested. Just 9 tackles, but the way he was deployed, yeah, mostly inactive. You take a look at the bottom of this, right? And he gets in. This is where he plays 26 snaps and 11 snaps. Finish out the season against the Ravens on the road and then the Browns. And these are the games where Kenny Pickett had to come from behind wins and stuff. But the way the Steelers play within their division now, aside from like the Bengals, and this is why Kwon Alexander is important. It's within the division. It's those 6 games you play against the Bengals, Browns, and Ravens. And for years I've been talking about, especially last year, there was a lot of zero blitz concepts and things. A few things that were added from Brian Flores. So he's with the Dolphins. They rattled the Ravens. They knew how to get to Lamar Jackson and make it. They found out what makes him tick. And he's going to be back. And he's got a big contract. And Ravens, they've hitched their saddles to this guy. He's their workhorse. That's their quarterback of the future. And of course, the Browns have a mobile quarterback with Deshaun Watson as well. And he's going to get a full year now. He's no longer suspended, full training camp, and then he gets to start the season. And a lot of people are talking about this is the year for the Browns and this and that, like they always do. Like I said, 37 years since 1989. 1989 is, I think, the last time. And that was the year that the Browns like plastered the Steelers like 51 something, like a really ugly game under Chuck Noll. But since then, the Browns have never finished ahead of the Steelers. And that whole amount of time, almost my entire lifetime. I'm 41 years old right now. And I can't remember a time where the Steelers were worse than the Browns ever, even when they had like losing or down seasons. But people are picking them that way. They see things that are on paper. Actually found a t-shirt from my uncle. It's a big Browns fan. The sign that you can't see off camera is like that one. It's split, house divided, Browns, Steelers, right? My family, Northeast Ohio, one way, an hour to Cleveland, hour to Pittsburgh. Everybody's split, friends and family. Got my uncle his shirt. It says, "This is our year." He's not so sure. That's the topic of discussion for me and Brian. We may be going live another week or two. I think we're going to do the whole schedule thing, but we're going to do that as a live show. I think that's going to be the plan. But right now with training camp and this news, I said, let's get on the horn. Let's get this to you. What are you thinking, Joe? I'm thinking like the way they attack the Ravens, they attack the Browns the same way. Nick Chubb, that offensive line, Watson being able to run, 5 linebackers on the field, guys that can hit. And they've got like the hybrid type guys too. You got Keanu Neal, who hits like a truck. And he's played linebacker. You got DeMonte Casey, who's still going to like float around, but that third like safety or dimebacker, well, you can actually use actual linebackers. And that's where Mark Robinson came in. It was also because Miles Jack, like I said, Miles Jack, I had a lot of promise. Miles Jack was the guy that I thought, this is the signing. This is the guy I wanted them to draft. And it didn't work out. I feel bad. Like, I feel bad for players when things don't work out. I mean, Jack, you see his usage like really fell off a cliff here toward the end, inactive against the Panthers. And then with the Raiders, Ravens, and Browns games, 16 snaps, 6, and then 22. And Devin Bush, to a very similar extent, when I pull his up, and that's the reason why Spillane got a lot of playing time, but I think it showed the Steelers that they want to have 3 inside linebackers. They want variety. They want guys that can keep other guys fresh and not just leave the same dudes on the field, because they will get involved some in the pass game. Devin Bush, you take a look at this. He did appear in every game last year, but those last 4, 25 snaps, 21 snaps, 5 and 5. They wanted some run support there. I'll bring up Spillane played, I think, 100% of the game when we get into this final part of the season, if my memory serves me correct. It's like, Joe, why are you looking at last year's stats? None of these guys are there anymore. They're all ham and eggers. Well, this is kind of the point. Spillane goes and plays 100% of the last 4 games. Panthers were run heavy. Raiders, not so much. I mean, they had Josh Jacobs, who's sitting out right now, but that's aside from the point is how you attack these teams with schemes. And the extra linebacker, somebody that's mobile, you cut the field in thirds, and you have Roberts and Holcomb and Kwon Alexander, guys that can make or have made 100 tackles in a season, 70, 80 tackles in a season. And I know Kwon hasn't been there. We bring up his stats of recent. He had a season where he had 145 tackles his second year in the league, played 16 games. That's a full season. willing hitter, and I think his style is actually precluded to why he hasn't been as durable or needed to be. I mean, 93 tackles, 97 tackles when only playing 12 games, missing 4 games in a 16-game schedule, with 2 of his first 3 years in the league, and 145. What did this come out to, even with missing 8 games? 237 solo tackles. That is absolutely crazy. And then you see this too. 25 tackles for loss, 15 quarterback hits. Does get some sacks, forces some fumbles, knocks down the ball, 20 passes defensed. And he had these numbers like later in his career, like if you projected him out to a full season, right? But it's a guy that, can you rely on him 100% of the time? No. But can you rely on him to play 20, 30 snaps like Miles Jack was in there? Mark Robinson. Is he going to be better than Mark Robinson? Hell yeah, he's going to be better than Mark Robinson. He's more experienced. Robinson's just still new to playing this position. Not crapping on Mark Robinson whatsoever. Mark Robinson will have a future with this team, I believe. It's hard. He's a 7th round pick. Is he a guy that's going to get plucked by somebody else if he gets cut? Because there's a lot of bodies right now. Kwiatkowski, Muse. The Steelers have kept 10 linebackers before, if you count inside linebackers. Can they keep 6 inside linebackers? It depends on what they keep on the safety. So I'm going to have to revise I did my way too early 53 projection. We've got some things that have changed. Monty Pottebaum, fullback from Iowa that they signed as a undrafted free agent, retired from the NFL now. So he might have been getting cut, to be completely honest, to make room. And make room for Kwon Alexander. And the Steelers made some moves too. I mean, they signed some running backs, and that's just, there's some guys in camp. They might get their opportunity though. I mean, this is like Jason Huntley got released. So they signed Greg Bell and John Lovett. Pottebaum went to the reserve retired list. So there's some moves that are they're being made here in order to have enough bodies to run certain drills, but maybe somebody gets noticed like Jalen Warren did. You never know. There's going to be some trimming around here, and I'm going to have to look, but that's not like a weak area. Those guys weren't signed because I think they're necessarily weak at depth. The only way that happens is, knock on wood, Harris or Warren gets hurt. But the inside linebacker, let's say one of these guys, Holcomb or Roberts, gets hurt. You're putting Tanner Muse or Kwiatkowski out there and feel that you'd have the same level, or even Robinson. Robinson for Roberts, perhaps. But you've got like a stable of guys that all are capable of doing some different things. And I think Kwon Alexander is going to surprise a lot of people. I think a lot of Jets fans are upset that he's not back this year. And for what I say to that is, thank you very much. I'll take like another dude to add to this group. Like I said, the secondary looks pretty strong. The safeties at least have at least one dependable player that can step up if necessary, if there's an injury. I think you find that all along the board for all the major positions that the Steelers have this year. I can't confidently say that last year. I said that. I was saying guard, offensive tackle, defensive tackle, outside linebacker. Like, they've tried. Malik Reed on that trade, that didn't really work out as you were hoping. But then again, who could come in and just, if somebody could play at the level of TJ Watt, they wouldn't be available via trade. They wouldn't be sitting on anybody's bench to begin with. That'd be foolish. You'd find yourself out of work as an NFL head coach rather quickly. So I do think a lot of this is scheme. It's planning. I think we're going to see a lot of this where your game planning is going to have multiple linebackers on the field at the same time. It's not just defensive back top heavy as we've seen. And I look at the Steelers schedule and I say to myself, okay, 49ers, Brock Purdy, he's not necessarily the most mobile guy. We're going to see the claim there is he's ready, he's throwing, and nothing. He's lost nothing. And I think his surgery was a little different than they thought it was going to be. And I don't think it was as invasive as Ben's was or as severe. So he may still have, we'll see what kind of career he ends up having. Cleveland Browns, week 2. Raiders again. See if the Raiders are more ground-based. They're going to throw the ball with Jimmy G, Devontae Adams, Texans, CJ Stroud. Crowd the box on that guy. Rookie quarterback, another mobile quarterback where the league's been moving. Lamar Jackson in week 5. Okay, Matt Stafford, he's more of a statue. But Let's see who else we got. Jacksonville Jaguars. Trevor Lawrence can move some. I don't know that that's definitely his game. Or with the Titans. Jordan Love with the Packers. Okay, you get the Browns again. You get the Bengals. Burrow's got some wiggle. But you also got to have guys that can cover. You get one of these mismatches. It's still going to be wide receiver on linebacker. But now it might not be a guy that's in quicksand. Like Robert Spillane, constant sitting duck. Just hit that middle of the field. Kyler Murray, Arizona Cardinals. Mac Jones with the Patriots, and not so much. Anthony Richardson, rookie with the Colts. Joe Burrow again. Geno Smith when they're out at Seattle for New Year's, and then the Ravens to finish the season. A good number of games in that schedule where you might see the Steelers deploy more of this mentality. And you may even see Kwon Alexander steal some snaps for some other guys, get a start. But he's got to stay healthy. He reminds me of like the same situation as Keanu Neal. Guy's going to contribute. He's going to be a monster as long as they can keep him on the field. How do you keep him on the field? You don't need him out there for 60, 70 plays as necessary. Maybe that happens one week because somebody illness. No, do we still have COVID protocols? I have no idea. Where somebody's got to sit out. Somebody gets dinged. No one's ever 100% healthy once this thing gets underway. You know how it works. A lot of guys are gladiators and they're playing hurt. Be interesting to see a fully healthy Larry Ogunjobi, as we talked about. So I think the remaining depth questions, we'll see where Patrick Peterson's at, or we'll see if they make another move for yet another corner. I don't think it's going to be James Pierre. Corey Trice. I think they were saying they were getting in the cart. I had conflicting reports from different beat reporters, but he went down and holding his knee in camp. And, of course, he'll need further evaluation. So monitor that and see what ends up happening. I thought that one said that he ended up walking off of the field, and one was where he got carted. So we'll have to see. We'll just have to monitor that because they're not always going to give you the full information right up front. And there's always that panic about guys that are on PUP list and all these other things. It's like, we'll just wait it out. Whenever this news, like, it just drops so quickly. You just gotta wait a second. Just wait a second and then evaluate from there. So, but if Trice, he's a 7th round guy. I think he's still at the end of the bench when it comes to the players that were going to come out there and play right away. But the corner depth, they could still maybe add another body. We'll end up seeing, but that's about it. I like where the Steelers stand everywhere else. Hope you do too. Though there's some comments and questions over there, especially over on YouTube. I'll try to address some of those, but for those who are traveling into Pittsburgh for games, join one of these Facebook groups and start asking. You're going to get about 30,000 questions. What I do on game day is different than everyone else, but I will go. I have a tailgate. I don't have like a big tailgate party, but I do what I like. I bring what I like to drink. I bring what I like to eat. I sit there. I get down there early enough so I don't have to wait in line to park. You're going to pay to park. You're going to be there anyway, as long as you're not in the garage. Bring the stuff that you like. Sit out, bring some chairs, or sit in the back of a truck, or, you know, your hatch is up on the car, the SUV, and chill out for a little bit. It's a little cheaper to eat and drink on your own dime when it's stuff you bring versus going into the stadium and you have to wait in these long concession lines. As far as things to do around town, there's no end in sight. Pittsburgh's a beautiful place. If you've never been there, there's plenty of things. I might try and get this on a podcast, but my opinions are going to be my likes. They're going to be different where I like to stay. Someone asked about staying downtown. Very expensive for game days. Very, very expensive, but you save the price of maybe parking or paying the hotel to park in downtown area by staying in the outskirts. Prices are still going to be high for hotels during games. Just keep that in mind. It's all dependent on your budget and what you're willing to spend, and if you're willing to travel, if you're flying in, or you're getting a rental car, et cetera, et cetera. So if there's more interest in something like that, hit me up in the comments. Let me know. I'll try. There's usually like some time because you had like you got time between the preseason ending and then the regular season starting up, so we could discuss some of that as well. I'll be more than happy to share some of my things that I've learned in my experiences over the years traveling in. But there's just so many different ways that you could, all roads lead to Rome, right? So, folks, thanks for joining us. Short episode here back at Latrobe. Going to be able to see some different things. Hopefully we don't have Friday Night Lights canceled this week. Pouring down rain last week, and that just that ruined the content because there were 2 practices that were canceled when I was out there last year. It also ruins like making the whole trip and staying out there for a few days if you got nothing to observe. So hopefully got better luck, knock on wood, this year. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. My name's Joe. Thank you for joining us once again, supporting Steel City Underground, no matter where you may be watching or listening from. Until next time, show end of this week, maybe a live show coming up soon. Preseason football on the horizon, Hall of Fame game coming up with the Browns and the Jets this week too. So football's back. Very excited. We have real things to talk about. Very excited about the Kwon Alexander signing. And just stay tuned. We'll have more coming your way. But until then, we encourage everyone out there to be safe, be good, and we'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.